We got it! We got it! The third volume of Arha, the white husky and his white cat drama.
I don't think you want to read the first chapter. It's a lot.
What's up guys, it's Kickter. Today, the Husky and his white cat Shizun Volume 3 just came out, and I am so excited to read this that Stitch and I both bought separate copies because we want to read it at the same time and we cannot wait for each other to finish it. I just want to talk about the cover really quick. So here we have Moran, and is that Chuanning or is that Shimei? I'm not sure. I don't know any spoilers about the series at all, so this is extra exciting for me. However, this is definitely Chuanning, giving Moran a little schmeck, a little kitten lick right on his little husky cheek. So cute. And they are sitting in the soup. It looks pretty sad. I know that like Shimei's death is something that like Emperor Moran was totally not cool with in the past timelines, so I wonder if we're gonna get some more insight on that. And when you open up the book, you just see more of the water that they're in, and there's like lotus flowers. Also a lot of lanterns. There's actually a lantern on the spine of this book too, so I wonder what that represents, or I wonder if there's an impactful scene with that. And then the extra special interior art is beautiful. It looks like Moran with a lantern, and then Chuanning is the moon. He is the stars in the sky and the constellations, and Moran is lighting a lantern up for him? Like, is that what's going on? This would make a sick tattoo. Okay, so I'm just gonna read the back really quickly. The lonely road to hell, as Moran accompanies Chuanning in pursuit of the mastermind behind the mysterious incidents plaguing his life reborn. Moran finds his hatred for his teacher beginning to waver. Yet all too soon, disaster strikes again. The opening of the heavenly rift, a tear in the fabric of the world that would set hell's most terrible demons loose upon humanity. Despite all he has seen since rebirth, Moran is unprepared to face the greatest tragedy of his past life, the calamity that turned him against his teacher forever and set him on the lonely path to a blood-stained throne. If Moran is to avoid this bitter fate, he must make a new choice and break with the past. But while the tragedy of this life may unfold differently, the sacrifices will be no less great. Ooh, okay. I'm so excited. I want to read the first chapter with you guys. So this chapter is called "This Venerable One's Past Affair with You." Oh my. Also, this is for mature readers, you have been warned. When Moran awoke, it was already bright and the sun was high in the sky. He rolled over and blinked. To his surprise, Chuanning was still fast asleep. Perhaps it was the effect of the tapir fragrance dew, or perhaps it was because of his poor health of late, along with bouts of fitful sleep troubled by dreams, that he was still deep in slumber even at this hour. His back was turned to Moran, and long inky hair spilled loose across pillow and bed, its strands the color of the night. Moran eyed him. If the teacher hadn't yet risen, there was no reason for the student to be particularly intrudious. The bed was too comfortable. He might as well stay in it a little longer, but just lying there was boring, so Moran scooched closer and began to play with Chuanning's hair. Oh my god. Chuanning's hair always smelled faintly of flowers, soft as smoke, fine as mist. It was one of Moran's favorite things to touch. He combed his fingers through those misty strands. The feel of them, smooth as satin, wrapped around his fingers, made his insides tingle. Oh my. A breeze swept through the window, and the dark, patterned bed curtains drifted gently in its wake. Moran narrowed his eyes. Certain parts of him were especially energetic in the morning, and with such a pleasant sensation at his fingertips, one that was so familiar, so... Oh dear. He lifted a lock of Chuanning's hair to his nose and inhaled. Just regular things to do to your Shizun. Those long, soft strands called to mind scenes from the bygone past. Since his rebirth, Moran had tried his best not to think too much about the salacious portions of his history with Chuanning, but for some reason this morning, he felt like indulging in reminiscent. His throat felt a little dry. He didn't want to touch Chuanning's body anymore, but his hair should be fine. Moran closed his eyes and pressed his lips lightly to the inky darkness between his fingers. This inky darkness. Back then, at Xisheng Peak's Wushan Palace, the same inky darkness had fallen around Moran like a curtain. He had held that man's slender waist in his hands, the feeling of lean muscle beneath his fingers so different from that of a woman. Chuanning straddled Moran's hips and worked himself up and down. Oh my god! You know what, guys? I don't think I can read this. This is a full-on, multiple-page-long, intense sex scene. Jeez. I'm gonna read this really quick and then I'm gonna summarize what happened. Warning for non-consensual stuff that happens in the past timeline. Skip to 540 if you don't want to hear the summary. This is very explicit. Chuaning seems to be going along with it and following his orders despite it being very painful, only because the last bit of dignity he has left is to make it not seem like he's in pain. This also seems to be the first time that Moran has done this to Chuaning. But then Chuaning says, "Just kill me." Moran then threatens him and says that he'll make Shumeng watch and then join in while he gets thousands of people to Moran is super satisfied over how upset Chuaning is over that. Moran is then like, "You're so gullible, as if I'd let anybody touch you but me, you're mine." Chuaning then starts crying, which is the first time Moran has ever seen Chuaning cry in front of him. Chuaning thinks about how this was somebody that he once really liked and now it is only torture. And he begs, asking Moran if he has any conscience left in him to stop, and says, "Moran, I can't take it anymore, it hurts." And the scene stops there. So it's very explicit and very sad. So now we're back to where we were before. Chuaning rolled over, jolting Moran out of his debauched reverie. The past dissipated like a scattering of birds, leaving only his heart to pound against his ribcage. The long strands between his fingertips slipped away as the person from his memories turned towards him, his face so close now that Moran could see each individual eyelash. How beautiful, he thought. Objectively speaking, Chuaning's looks weren't gentle or soft by any measure. His features were handsome, sharp, and intense, as if cut by blades, and in truth more masculine than average, but that only made him all the more enticing. Moran wanted to see this proud, unbending man come undone beneath him. His heart beat faster and faster. He stared at Chuaning's face, and his gaze drifted inch by inch until it came to rest on those pale lips, lightly parted in sleep. He leaned in unconsciously, a little closer, and their lips would meet, the sweet taste of dew. Moran's throat worked as he swallowed. His mouth felt dry. A little closer, just a little more, almost. Suddenly, a flash of clarity shot through his arousal-addled mind. He froze, face deathly pale. What was he doing? Moran sat up swiftly and stared at the man on the bed. Chuaning, no matter how many times he'd betted him. That was all in the past now. The fuck was he doing? Had he lost his mind? Was it possible he really did like him? Oh, honey, I think you like him a lot. Moran blanched further at the thought, so unsettled he couldn't think straight. He drew in a deep breath and buried his face in his hands, scrubbing it roughly. Then, cursing under his breath, he pulled on his outer robe and swept out of the room as if running away. Goodness gracious. Okay, since I basically skipped all of chapter 1, read chapter 2 as well. This venerable one's idiom explanation is just fine. By the time Chuaning finally woke up, it was noon. By the tapper, fragrant stew was certainly quite effective. He had managed to get a full night's rest, undisturbed by dreams. He sat up leisurely and yawned. Moran? That disciple of his loved sleep far more than he, so it was a surprise not to find him still curled up on the floor. Chuaning blinked, then called for him again. No reply. He stood and smoothed his robes, brushing through the wispy strands of his long hair and pulling it up as he padded towards the screen dividing the room. The divider bore an elegantly painted image of wild birds soaring through a cloud bank woven between mountain peaks. Steam rose from behind it. Someone was bathing on the other side. He hesitated before the screen and tried again. Moran? Still, there was no reply. Growing suspicious, Chuaning knocked on the wooden frame of the divider. After several more attempts with no response, he finally furrowed his brow and walked around the screen. This part of the room was intended for washing and bathing, and a large bath barrel of camphor wood stood right in the middle. Chuaning glanced at it hastily. It was filled with hot, steamy water, and bathing herbs set out earlier by the inn floated on its surface. But right now, there was no one to be seen. He looked around again and spied Moran's clothes folded neatly over the wooden frame. He couldn't possibly have bathed and then run out naked, could he? Chuaning's temples throbbed as he shoved that terrifying thought aside. His lips pressed tightly together and face slightly ashen. He turned and was about to leave when he heard gurgling from behind him. Chuaning looked back to see bubbles rising to the water's surface from beneath the herbs and petals floating in the barrel. Was someone inside? No sooner had the thought crossed his mind than a naked young man sprang from the barrel with a splash, like a dragon soaring out of the water. Chuaning was so startled he inadvertently stumbled back 2 steps. It seemed Moran had been holding his breath underwater and didn't hear Chuaning calling for him outside. When he could hold it no longer, he stood, fully exposing the upper half of his body. He shook the water from his hair like a dog drying itself, splashing all of it right onto Chuaning's robes. Moran! Ah! Moran froze mid-shake, eyes wide and round. He clearly hadn't expected Chuaning to be there and gasped, "Shizun!" Chu Henning's eyes swept across the young man's well-proportioned figure. Moran's shoulders had already become quite broad, the lines of his body firm and defined, supple and youthfully taut. Droplets of water traced the contours of his toned chest, gathering in thin rivulets that trickled down, dazzling under the sunlight. And then there's a picture. Look at that. He looked like a beautiful merman. Oh, Chu Henning has it so bad. Half out of the water, eyes glistening, a few stray petals caught in the wet hair that clung to his body. Moran wiped the water from his face and leaned towards Chu Henning with a grin, his shoulder blades flexing like a leopard's as he folded his arms over the edge of the bath and tilted his head to beam brightly up at him. Chu Henning found himself a little dizzy, his face a little warm, and he asked without thinking, "What are you doing? Taking a bath? In the morning?" Hee hee. Moran chuckled guiltily. He was actually rinsing with cold water in an attempt to put out the fire in his loins. Oh my god. It had worked well enough, but then, since he had already stripped, he felt he might as well take a bath while he was at it. The soak had put him in a good mood, so he had divided down to practice holding his breath. He certainly hadn't anticipated that Chu Henning would wander in like this. What's with the goofy smile? Chu Henning knitted his brows, trying to cover up the heat steaming his brain with a cool tone of voice. Why didn't you wake me if you were up early? Messing around like this, throwing your clothes all over the place? Where are your Shizun, you've got some water on your face. There was a splash as Moran lifted his hands to wipe Chu Henning's cheek. Nurs. Moran laughed. He had forgotten that his hand was wet too, and would only make Chu Henning's cheek even wetter. Chu Henning stood frozen, the air around him cooling by several degrees. His expression was strained, his lips pressed together, only his eyelashes quivered now and then. He felt like he was trying to train a hunting dog, only to get nuzzled by the crafty pup instead. Oh, that's so sweet. Get out and get dressed. We have to head back to the sect. In the end, Chu Henning tossed out these words with a frosty expression and left with a swish of his sleeves. But where Moran couldn't see, the tips of Chu Henning's ears were red, just like how, where Chu Henning couldn't see, the pairs of dewy eyes, still tinged with yearning and swimming with complicated feelings, stared helplessly after him until he disappeared around the corner. These two have it so bad for each other, oh my god. The endearing smile slid off Moran's face, replaced by a look of frustration. He smacked the water in annoyance, then scooped up a handful and scrubbed mercilessly at his face. What the actual hell? What was wrong with him today? All he did was look at Chu Henning a little while bathing and touched his cheek briefly. He had just managed to suppress his arousal, and now he was hard again. Oh my god, oh my god. Weren't you just getting dressed? What took you so long? Chu Henning chided. He turned from his place by the window in obvious exasperation. His robes fluttered gently in the breeze, and fine strands of hair caressed his jade-like cheeks. Moran coughed. I was drying my hair with a spell, he mumbled vaguely, but I'm not very good at it, so it took a while. Sorry to keep Shizun waiting. Such uncharacteristic propriety caught Chu Henning a bit off guard. He shot his disciple another glance before saying, If you're done washing, go get packed. We can go rent a boat. I don't feel like riding swords, and I'm tired of horses too. Let's go by the water and enjoy some sightseeing on the way. That's sweet. Okay, sounds good. Moran didn't dare look at him for too long, coughing a few more times to cover his unease. Chu Henning frowned. What's wrong with your throat? Nothing. Moran turned hastily to go pack. They stopped at a store to pick up some snacks and dry goods for the trip, then made their way to the docks to rent a vessel. This is so cute! They're going on a little boat trip! The pair sailed down the Yangtze River. When they came to an area impassable by water, they unfurled the wooden wings of the boat and soared through the air on a magical draft instead. This method of travel wasn't swift, but it was peaceful and relaxing. 8 days later, they arrived at Shisheng Peak. The wooden boat slid down the current to dock by the mountain gate. Moran lifted the bamboo curtain, allowing Chu Henning to step out from the cabin first before following himself. The hour was late, and the moon hung bright overhead. The Yuheng elder had written to Shu Xiangyang with the explicit instructions not to send a reception, so they encountered no one until they already climbed the stairs to the main gate. There, 4 disciples guarded the entrance. Yuheng elder! Mo Gangzi! For some reason, panic flashed across the disciples' faces at the sight of them. Before either could react, all 4 dropped to their knees and looked up at the pair. Elder, Gangzi, they entreated urgently. There are people inside who've come to seek retribution against you. The sect leader sent a messenger bird to tell you to stay away, but it looks like that fat bird was too slow. Please go hide in Wucheng Tower for a while. Whatever you do, don't go inside right now. Chu Henning narrowed his eyes. What is the matter? Why are you all so panicked? It's people from the upper cultivation realm. They're accusing the elder of demonic cultivation, and they want to haul you off to Tinyan Pavilion for an inquiry. Tinyan Pavilion? Moran repeated, alarmed. Isn't that the prison set up by all 10 great sects, reserved for the most heinous of criminals? That's the one! They're here about the incident at Butterfly Town, one of the four, a young woman said anxiously. Does the elder remember? That time you were canned as punishment? At most, that was a misuse of cultivation techniques or involving ordinary people. Besides, Shizun has already accepted punishment for it. Why have they suddenly dragged out that old affair again? And even gone so far as to involve Tinyan Pavilion? Moran frowned. And what's this about demonic cultivation? We don't know the details either, but we heard everyone in Butterfly Town died overnight, killed by some half-ghost, half-deity entity that appeared to be acting as someone's behest. The ghost deity is incredibly powerful, and the average wandering cultivator definitely wouldn't be able to order her about, so those people from the upper cultivation realm suspect that Yuheng Elder did it! Chuaning had no words. Pfft. Moran laughed, and here I was getting all worried. This is a simple misunderstanding, easy enough to explain. There's no need to hide. He turned to grin at Chuaning. Shizun, can you believe these people? Expel some small fiend, and they'll say you're taking opportunities from the youngsters. Purge a major demon, and they'll accuse you of practicing demonic cultivation and keeping a ghost deity to do all your bidding. At this rate, we'd best stop doing anything at all and sit at home meditating all day like they do. But Chuaning wasn't laughing. His expression was terrible, and he stood quietly for a time before asking, every single person at Butterfly Town is dead? That's what I heard. Not one survivor. Chuaning closed his eyes, silent. The female disciple noticed his strange expression. Elder? She asked uneasily. This incident was not my doing, but it may have occurred because I was not sufficiently thorough in the exorcism. If I am indeed to blame, then I will not shirk responsibility. Chuaning opened his eyes slowly. Moran, let's go in. The walls of Loyalty Hall were lined with 12 lamps of coiling bronze. Each lamp was 10 feet tall with 9 layers of branches extending from the center stand, short towards the top and longer towards the bottom. The 356 candle lanterns on the branches lit the main hall of Shisheng Peak so brightly that the night was practically indistinguishable from day. Shui Zhenggong, dressed in full martial attire, stood straight backed on the high dais of the hall. He looked like a cast-iron statue as he stared down the people below with the eyes of a predator. Li Zhengzhu, I'll say it one last time, the Yuheng Elder is not at the sect right now. Moreover, I can vouch with my very life that what happened at Butterfly Town was no doing of his, so quit throwing around all these baseless whatchamacallit. Next to him, Madame Wang whispered discreetly from behind her sleeve. Accusations. Ahem! Quit throwing around all these baseless whatchamacallit accusations! Shui Zhenggong declared with an imposing sweep of his hand. Madame Wang was at a loss for words. Not counting Shisheng Peak's own guard disciples, some 30 people waited in the hall. The group was dressed in jade green robes, carried horsetail whisks in their arms, and wore square black gauze jinshen hats, obviously disciples from the recently established and rapidly rising Bitan Manor of the upper cultivation realm. The man at their head was in his 50s, with a pair of long whiskers that stuck out from the sides of his face and drifted in the slight draft like those of a catfish. This was none other than the Bitan Manor leader himself, Li Wuxian. Shui Zhengmen, Li Wuxian sneered as he twirled a whisker. I'm only here to reason with you because your sect is considered a righteous one. The tragedy at Butterfly Town occurred after your Yuheng Elder and his disciples performed an exorcism there. Other than these three, the Chen household has no contact whatsoever with any cultivators. We have evidence and witnessed both. You have no choice but to admit fault in this matter. Shumeng, standing next to his father, couldn't take it anymore. And what fucking right do you lot have to speak? When have you ever taken it upon yourself to deal with the problems of the lower cultivation realm? All you ever do is sit on your hands, trying to cultivate yourselves to immortality. Then the moment something happens, you rush down here and try to lay the blame on my Shizun. What kind of justice is that? Shu Gongshi. Rather than get mad, Li Wuxian leveled a meaningful look at him and smiled. I've heard of you. People call you the son of the phoenix. But meeting you in person today and seeing for myself your poise and composure has certainly been, shall we say, an eye-opening experience. You, Li Wuxian rolled his eyes and turned back to Xu Zhengyang. Zhu Zhengmeng, we of the upper cultivation realm practice strict adherence to the laws, and we intend to get to the bottom of this. If you really refuse to cooperate and will not hand over Yuheng, Moran, and the rest, I shall have no choice but to enact the foremost sect of the cultivation world, Rufeng sect, to take charge of the investigations themselves. Xu Zhengyang had always had a fierce temper. He scoffed at this threat. I'm well aware that your Bitan Manor is chummy with Rufeng sect, but even if Nangong Liu himself stood before me today, I'd tell him the same thing. I will not hand them over. This has nothing to do with Yuheng. Well then, Shu Meng said, hot on his heels, Li Zhengzhu, kindly see yourself out. See that? Did everyone see that? Did you see how difficult and unreasonable they are? They're aiding and abetting criminals. A man's shaky voice burst from the crowd. It was the same back then, when that Mo character stole my friend's things. We came here courteously, seeking justice, and they brushed us off and kicked us out, just like this. Li Zhengju, you saw it too, right? If Shisheng Peak is allowed to continue acting so outrageously, considering themselves above the law, then the lower cultivation realm will be done for. He had barely finished when a low chuckle came from the hall's entrance. Everyone turned towards the door. There, in the shadow, where the light spilling from the hall did not reach, stood a blue-robed young man in light armor. He leaned casually against the intricately carved vermilion doorframe and watched the scene within the hall with a languid expression. This youth was extremely handsome, his supple and firm skin practically glowing under the candlelight. Pray tell, Chang Gongzi, when exactly did I ever steal anything from your friend? His smile was soft and charming. That Rong San, or was it Rong Ju? I can't remember. Anyways, that pretty boy, is he your friend or your paramour? Rather deceptive of you to only tell part of the story, What if you hurt his feelings? The man complaining so woefully was none other than that merchant Chang from Yizhu, the very same who had declared that Shisheng Peak hadn't seen the last of him all those months ago. Chang Gongxi whipped his head around, startled to see Moran, but then something flickered in his eyes, and he howled in misery. Moe you bastard! My friendship with Ju'er is like that of a mortar and pestle, perfectly innocent. He's already died so tragically at the hands of your fiendish ilk, yet you still dare slander his name? There is a footnote saying that the idiom referring to people who are friends regardless of status or means is the mortar and pestle line. The idiom finds its origin in a story. During the Eastern Han Dynasty, a scholar named Gong Shamu, in order to raise funds to attend the Imperial College, donned plain clothes and found work pounding rice using mortar and pestle at the residence of an official named Wu Yu. Wu Yu found him cultured and eloquent and made friends with him and paid for him to continue his education. Gong Shamu went on to become an accomplished official. So he's like, we are friends no matter of our differing status. So he just said, my friendship with Ju'er is like that of a mortar and pestle, perfectly innocent. He's already died so tragically at the hands of your fiendish ilk, yet you still dare slander his name. What? A chill ran down Moran's spine, and his eyes widened slightly. Rong Ju is dead? His parents are from Butterfly Town, Chang Gongxi went on, angry and tearful. He met with misfortune while visiting home some days ago. That's how I learned of you and your Shizun's evil deeds. That's why I went to Li Zhengju for justice. Moran's opinion of Rong Ju was far from positive, so after the initial shock had passed, he dismissed Chang Gongxi with a curt wave of his hand. Friendship of a mortal and pestle? So what, you're the pestle and he's the mortar? Pound, pound, pound? Not sure how that's innocent, but okay. That's what I was thinking. Moran! Chang Gongxi hadn't expected this and was quite affronted. You illiterate reprobate! You... Ahem. It was a bit much for Madame Wong, too. Only Xu Zhengyang blinked and said nothing. Mortar this and pestle that. Whatever it meant, it couldn't be anything good. He felt like his nephew's words made quite a lot of sense, actually. Nothing's wrong with them. From the darkness of the night outside the hall came a sigh like the shattering of jade, or the first melt of a frozen-over lake, deep and indescribably lovely. A slender, well-proportioned hand reached out and delivered an unceremonious slap right across Moran's face. Such obscenity! Friendship of mortal and pestle means a friendship that disregards status and means like that between Gong Shamu and Wu Yu. Chuaning appeared in the doorway, expression dark and tone cross. What are you doing hanging around the door, being an embarrassment? Get the hell inside! Shizun! Shizun! Xu Meng and Shi Mei, overjoyed, rushed forward to greet him, but Xu Zhengyang's eyes widened in exasperation. Yu Heng, what are you doing back here? How long were you planning to hold out by yourself if I didn't come? Chuaning strode serenely into Loyalty Hall, his handsome face like that of an immortal under the candlelight, unsurpassed in grace and elegance. He came to stop before the golden seat within the hall and exchanged a nod with Xu Zhengyang, then turned towards the petitioners with a flourish of his wide sleeves. Chu Wanning of Shisheng Peak, humble bearer of the title of Yu Heng Elder, it seems you have questions for me. I would not refuse your answers. Li Wuxin stared in shock, but Chu Wanning, his phoenix eyes like smoke, spared him the barest glance before continuing in an even tone. Kindly do enlighten me. Damn! Okay. So, in the last novel, Moran got stabbed with the knife that was like, you're gonna follow your true feelings, and it seemed like he was gonna fall harder for Shi Mei and hate Chu Wanning. But so far, he had a super horny dream remembering something about their past and is obsessed with him and just keeps getting hard and wants to kiss him. Okay, however, the plot thickens. They're suddenly now being accused of demonic cultivation? I don't know where it's gonna go from here. But I just love that right off the bat in the third volume, we're back to Chuaning being really sweet to Moran and then also slapping him across the face, and Moran being obsessed with Chuaning and also being an idiot, not understanding idioms and coming across really, really funnily in the book. So I love this series and I love Meat Bun, and I'm very excited to be hurt by this novel. And about the flashback scene, yes, that was sickening. I did not enjoy reading that. I do believe it was meant to show how terrible of an emperor Moran was in the past, and we actually got a glimpse into some of his terrible crimes against Chuaning so that we can see the comparison of their relationship now in the good timeline. I don't really think doing something like that is forgivable, but I'm holding out the hope that this is a fantasy novel and perhaps there was something controlling him, making him do those things, and it wasn't on his own volition. I don't know. If you guys like these kinds of videos and you want to hang out with me and chat more about books like these, you can join my YouTube membership. Click join down below and we can have members only live streams with a live chat with me and Stitch, and we play games and it's a lot of fun. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!